So to begin with, we're running 3 virtual machines. We've got our identity appliance, we have our audit appliance, which is acting as our connected eDirectory system, and then we have a Windows virtual machine that's running Active Directory and Exchange. So in Designer, we can see our entire project. One of the primary benefits of Rapid Identity is that you shouldn't have to change code. Rather, you can just change global configuration values, which will change how the code acts to implement the business rules that work for your organization. For example, in the employees driver, we've got several different options. For example, how do we want to name your user accounts? Do you want them to be named based on employee ID or based on their name? Well, in this scenario, we want to show using the employee ID as a naming convention. And along with that option, we can add an alpha prefix because some systems don't prefer an all numeric login account, so we can add this E for employee as an option. Another option we have is how do we want to set the initial password for the new users? For this first test, we'll just show that we're going to use a static assignment and use the password for all users. So briefly, just to show the file that we're going to be passing, this is a scenario where the HR system is going to export data and send it to the identity appliance to be processed. So here we've got 2 employees that we're hiring, Troy and Shana. Troy is a superintendent, Shana is an assistant superintendent for a school district. Other than contact information, this is showing their employee ID. So here's the employee ID for Troy and likewise for Shana. It's got their department numbers, their employee type, which is E, the employee status, which is A for active. And then lastly at the end here is your manager's ID, manager's workforce ID. So Shana, as you can see, reports to Troy. So we'll make that file now available to be processed. And if we come back and refresh our identity application tree, we'll see that we now have 2 new users provisioned. And based on the naming convention that we spoke of, they're named with an E followed by their employee ID. So you'll see all their contact information and their mailing information because that's made available in the file. And we've got several other attributes that are here. Some of them come straight from the file, some of them are derived. For example, the direct report attribute was derived because we knew Shana reported to Troy, so Troy had direct report added as well as is manager set to true. This is a result of our manager loopback driver that takes care of all this for you. Along with that, we've got Linux attributes populated that are required for Linux authentication when using LDAP. And since Troy is a manager, our groups loopback driver also was used and automatically populated Troy into the manager's group. Now if we log in as Troy into user app using our statically assigned password, it lets us know that our password has expired and we've got a few grace logins left. And we're also implementing password self-service, so the user is forced to answer their challenge questions before entering user app. And then we'll see our default view is an org chart, so we can see immediately that Shana reports to Troy. Another key when using user app specifically is because our manager loopback driver set up the manager and direct report relationships, when Troy logs in, here's his manager-related tasks for the requests and approvals. Whereas if we log in as Shana, Shana is not a manager because she's reporting to Troy and has no direct reports. So when we log in as her, she can see her manager by moving up one. And under request, she does not have the team function, so she can only request things for herself. And finally, since we chose to provision Exchange, if we come back into the users, the accounts have been provisioned in the connected E directory and the connected Act directory system, which I'll show you here in a second. And Exchange was also provisioned and then brought back the email address for both of our users. Now, obviously, this isn't a very nice email address, and that's configurable as well. So now if we come up and look at the audit app tree, based on a placement that performed a query, the driver knew to place the two users inside the user's employees container. Likewise, if we go into the Active Directory domain, both of these people were in the administrative department, and so the placement was performed by a query that returned the admin OU, and so that's where we placed Troy and Shana. And here we chose to do the naming convention. Again, this is based on configurations, is based on basically their full name. But if you look at the actual login names, it matches what we're using in eDirectory.